everyone. This is one of my absolute favorite pieces of bad design. This is called the anti-loneliness ramen bowl. I'm just going to leave it there for a sec. Don't ever design anything like this. Every day, innovative companies promise to make the world a better place. Are they succeeding? I have to say, it's really so hard to figure out how to start this talk, or rather what image to use to start this talk, because every day there's just fresh fodder. I want to start with Bodega, a startup that raised over $2 million to open a, wait for it, corner store. But then I saw this automated tooth flosser, dental flosser. This connects to your computer. And then this vehicle that delivers produce to your door, only fresh produce, just vegetables to your door. And then this water bottle that glows to remind you to drink out of it. A dog parker. Who has a dog here? Okay, would you lock your dog in this thing? I mean, it just kind of hurts me to think about it. How many times have you had something like this not work? You know, like a storage locker or something, and you just be like looking at your dog, like, sorry, I'll get you out. And you know, all of these products have zero customer service. You have to send an email, and then you get an email back that says, we'll get back to you in 24 hours. And so imagine if your dog's in here and you had a problem. Okay, what could go wrong? But let's back up. In 2016, I wrote a piece for the New York Times. I just want to point out, my design columns run in the opinion section, which is great because it reaches non-design people so they can begin to think about these things. It also presents a really interesting challenge because I have to assume zero knowledge of anything about design. But this is one of those pieces that I wrote in ultimate frustration. It began with a list of products and services that had launched that year. And I get, you know, a lot of press releases, and I'm going to read some of them to you. And you'll see why I got so frustrated. A service that sends a valet on a scooter to you wherever you are to park your car. A service that will film anything you desire with a drone. A service that will pack your suitcase virtually. A service that delivers a new toothbrush head to your mailbox every 3 months. A service that delivers beer to your door. An app that analyzes the quality of your French kissing. A smart button, I'm not making any of this up, a smart button and zipper that alerts you if your fly is down. A sensor placed in your child's diaper that sends you an alert when the diaper needs changing. An app that lets you brew your coffee from anywhere and text you when it's ready, because your house is 20,000 square feet and you wouldn't know. An app to locate rentable yachts. An app that imparts wisdom. This list continues. I could read it to you all day. It would be sort of like an epic poem, but I'll stop there for now. We are overloaded daily with new discoveries, patents, and inventions, all promising a better life. But that better life has not been forthcoming for most. In fact, the bulk of the above list targets a very specific and tiny slice of the population, namely the dudes that designed those things. And it is mostly dudes. For people working on such projects, the goal seems to be to provide themselves everything that their mothers no longer do, like grilled cheese on demand. Too many well-funded entrepreneurial efforts turn out to promise more than they can deliver. I think we've all heard of the Theranos blood test, that they had actually made fake lab equipment and all kinds of other crazy things. Or they read as parody. So I guess I would ask, when everything is characterized as world-changing, is anything? The impulse to conflate toothbrush delivery, or on-demand grilled cheese, with Nobel Prize-worthy good works is not just a bit cultish, it's been a wildfire burning through the so-called innovation sector. Products and services are designed to disrupt market sectors, i.e. bringing things to market that no one really needs, more than to solve actual problems that people really have, especially those problems experienced by, say, single mothers, the white rural poor, veterans, out-of-work Americans, etc. If the most fundamental definition of design is to solve problems, why are so many people devoting so much energy to solving problems that don't exist? How can we get more people to look beyond their own lived experience? I learned a few years ago that hack, a term so beloved in Silicon Valley that it's painted on the courtyard of the Facebook campus and is visible from planes flying overhead, is prison slang for, quote, a horse's ass carrying keys. It's true. To hack is to cut, to gash, to break. Hack proceeds from the belief that nothing is worth saving, that everything needs fixing. But is that really the case? Are we fixing the right things? Are we breaking the wrong ones? Is it necessary to start from scratch every time? The idea of disruption appeals as a kind of subversive provocation, but too many designers think they are innovating when they're actually merely breaking and entering. In this way, innovation is very much mirroring the larger public discourse, a distrust of institutions combined with unabashed confidence in one's own judgment. I don't know who runs our country might feel this way, shifts solutions away from fixing, repairing, or improving and shoves them toward destruction for its own sake. I was interviewed last year about Hyperloop. Do people know what Hyperloop is generally? Apologies, I live in Silicon Valley, so everything feels like it's the center of the world. Hyperloop is a transportation system that is, in theory, there would be a pneumatic tube that would sort of propel people through this tube at several hundred miles an hour, in lieu of subways, trains, etc. I'm a skeptic, as you might guess. I referred to the Hyperloop in print as, quote, transportation's new girlfriend. The writer asked how I didn't think it could be a good idea because so many people were funding it. I laughed, and I referred him to Juicero, the now famous juicer once priced at nearly $700 and funded to the tune of $120 million, now a defunct company, and I think a lot of people know the story, after it was discovered that you could simply squeeze the bag of vegetables meant for the machine to make the juice. You didn't actually need the machine to make the juice. Just because there's a lot of money behind something does not necessarily mean it's a good idea. But back to Hyperloop. So the idea for this sort of originated with Elon Musk of Tesla fame. By the way, I got picked up by a Tesla from my hotel yesterday. It was quite surprising. He floated this idea, a 58-page outline around Hyperloop, and he said, I'm not going to do this. Someone out there in the ether figured this out. He presented as an alternative to California's high-speed rail, and indeed, the initial plan was to run it down the state of California. Musk announced that he wanted to make Hyperloop an open-source Manhattan project for high-speed transportation. Since he didn't have time to pursue it, other people could pursue it on his behalf. His initial dream was to propel passengers from San Francisco to Los Angeles in about a half an hour. Amtrak takes 12 hours right now. Flight time is about an hour. High-speed rail, when completed, and it will be completed, will take about 2 to 3 hours. So several entities embarked on developing Hyperloop. And it's meant to look like this. Musk has said repeatedly in the media that he has verbal approval to build Hyperloop. If anyone's ever done any work with the government, there is no such thing as verbal approval to do a project. That said, because he's Elon Musk, many cities are actually intrigued and have kind of went down the path of exploring the viability of this. So why do I think Hyperloop is solving the wrong problem? Well, when I went to the launch of Hyperloop, it actually looks like this. Thank you. I was at this event with like 400 guys in hats, and everyone was like, this is amazing. And I was like, this is a tube. like not attached to anything in the desert. I don't know. I'm not riding it. But more importantly, what problem is it solving? The Japanese maglev train already goes nearly 400 miles an hour. We don't really need to disrupt that technology. China has trains that go over 200 miles an hour. In 2016, Germany developed the first hydrogen-powered passenger train, which produces nothing but steam as a byproduct. And it's not getting much publicity as yet, but it's solving a huge problem in terms of pollution and efficacy. So should we be spending billions of dollars to create a brand new, unproven system that goes a little bit faster, or should we be spending money to implement highly proven and efficient technology instead? Can we devote resources to fix the US's inability to deliver on not just rail, but any infrastructure project? Okay, shifting to smaller scale transportation. This is a rendering of an autonomous vehicle. In urbanism and tech circles right now, all anyone can talk about is driverless cars. I've actually been lecturing all over the world about driverless cars. It's all really, people see them as the key to fixing every urban problem right now. AVs no longer seem out of reach. What it does seem to be doing, though, is driving towards the wrong problems. I will say, though, if our driverless future includes people reading hardcover novels, okay. It's so weird. I just don't really understand. We've been talking about driverless cars for a very long time. These images are from 1923 on the left and 1956 on the right. And the driverless car doesn't look really any more futuristic today. In fact, it pretty much looks like a car, which is weird because it doesn't have to look like a car, right? If you don't need to be at the steering wheel, sorry. It could kind of look like anything, but there's been this very limited scope. In fact, Waymo, which is owned by Google, which is the largest company doing this, have basically chosen a Chrysler minivan to be the test AV, and I'm like, wow, the future is here and it's a Chrysler minivan. Super, super disappointing. So AVs could be potentially a safer way to get around. Cars are dangerous. Over 32,000 people were killed by motor vehicles in 2011 alone, mostly because of the people who drive them. If you remove the driver, say autonomous vehicle advocates, you'll remove the danger. Further, self-driving vehicles could provide mobility for those who lack it, the disabled, seniors, even children, and for those who perhaps shouldn't have access to it otherwise, such as drunken drivers. If these cars are electric, they could be better for the environment than current models, and theoretically, AVs don't need to park, freeing up a ton of urban space for uses other than parking. This is what's getting the most play right now. If you ditch the car with the driver, you get acres of parkland. Well, not quite. In all the excitement of getting the thing to work, many have lost sight of what it was meant to fix in the first place. This is the parking lot at Tesla headquarters. Workers get there at 4:30 in the morning to find a place to park because they haven't been able to figure out how to get all the people situated into the factory every day. It seems to me if Tesla can't figure out how to get its employees to park, there's so many problems that they have yet to solve. Further, if you drive around the Bay Area, you will not observe a sudden decrease in parking lots. In fact, Apple, when it finished its headquarters in Cupertino last year, it included parking for 11,000 cars, which is approximately one space per employee. It's very odd to me that a company so invested in the driverless future would also build 11,000 parking spaces. So it's like, who's going to jump and do this? Because no one can be certain of the time scale of AVs, and because innovation is fast and architecture is slow, it's hard to see when that lack of a need for parking will catch up with the built environment. And it's really expensive to turn a parking garage into something else. Finally, it doesn't matter what kind of car it is, it takes up the same amount of space on the road. Cars, electric cars, autonomous cars, Uber, Lyft cars. I could talk about AVs all day. I won't, but I think that my main emphasis here is that these were meant to solve a problem, that is making driving safer, and along the way have caused a host of other problems and have kind of lost sight of the original one. So I think if you look at new studies on, so do you have Uber and Lyft? Most people know what Uber and Lyft is. There's all kinds of studies about how the number of cars on the road is increasing exponentially due to the introduction of Uber and Lyft, that Uber and Lyft have thus far caused as many traffic deaths as drunk driving. So all the things that they were originally meant to do, they're actually exacerbating. So at this, if I was consulting with any of these companies, I would say, like, let's take a pause and step back and figure out what the problem was we were initially trying to solve here. What we should be doing is figuring out how to get as many people as possible where they need to go, not in single occupancy vehicles, but people. Focus on people, not cars. By continuing to focus on the car, we run the risk of making the paradigm of one person in one car so attractive that people stop being interested in or taking public transit. Already this is happening in 31 out of 35 cities that have relatively good public transit. Ridership is down. Not fully because of this development, but because people really love their cars. So how is we as designers, thinkers, et cetera, can make walking, biking, scooters, whatever it is, more attractive options. So we have the knowledge, the technology, the skill to do better than the anti-loneliness ramen bowl. I know we all have clients, and there's the issue of capitalism. But in all seriousness, the ability to identify the right problem from the beginning, rather than inventing a need in search of a solution, is where we all need to be looking. So how do we solve the right problems? This is Frances Gabe. She died about 2 years ago at 101. She invented a self-cleaning house. A house that can clean itself? That's a solution to a problem that everybody has. Gabe is the holder of many patents, including this one, which is a self-loading dishwasher. That's a little scale model of the house. I always say, you know, when people talk about the smart home, I'm like, until you can find something that folds my laundry, I'm not interested. Like, I don't need my coffee pot to call me and tell me my coffee's ready. I need the dishwasher to unload itself, right? So a lot of the best problem solving that uses technology is pretty unsexy, and that's why I spend a lot of time trying to write about examples of it. Frances focused on solving problems that she had, and that's awesome, but she didn't assume that her problems were the problems of everybody else, and that's one of the most serious issues we're facing now. When you are approaching a problem or a product, who is your focus group? If it's the 6 guys that you sit next to, which is usually what happens, that results, instead of products like this is stuff from the Cooper Hewitt Accessible Design Show that probably just closed. At the bottom is a hearing aid that's sort of worn as jewelry to kind of elevate things that people actually need instead of making them things that people are embarrassed of. These are these amazing prosthetics by Hands of X that are more in the vein of like Muji, sort of almost like a fashion brand. This super smart, instead of a cane or this bike, you know, you can sort of stand and push it and it also collapses. So instead of getting products like this or this, a better breast pump, which I have to say the breast pump is probably the worst designed product that anyone has ever had to use. So instead of all this, and these products are not the products that are getting the money. These are the products that need to fight the hardest for the investment. Instead, we get this. We get wine delivered to your door. We get this, which is called a device to end barbecue bummer. It's a propane tank reader that like alerts you when your propane tank is low, so you don't have barbecue bummer. This cooler at the bottom, it's called the Coolest Cooler. I think it raised some ungodly, possibly $40 million on Kickstarter, but they weren't actually, and it has like a speaker and a blender and all this kind of stuff. They weren't actually able to meet any of their production goals, and I think they had to give all the money back. And then I think the one on the, I don't even want to delve into the one on the right. It's some kind of smart Wi-Fi enabled condom thing. So that's what we get. So I don't mean negative. People are doing great work. Does anyone know this project, Lava May in San Francisco? So this is what I think, like, it's solving the right problem. It's super unfortunate that this is the problem that needs to be solved. There are no public restrooms in San Francisco. If you've been to San Francisco recently, the streets are filthy. There's nowhere for anyone to go to the bathroom. This woman, Denise Sandoval, who lived in San Francisco, she worked in PR. She was tired of seeing, walking by all of this every day, and she requisitioned an old muni bus. And inside this minibus are 2 full bathrooms with a shower and a toilet, shampoo, all that kind of stuff. And she parks it, initially she parked it in one neighborhood in the Tenderloin and would stay there with volunteers, and homeless people could come in and use these facilities and get socks and toothbrushes and all that kind of stuff. And this is one of those things, like, it's tragic that it has grown as a program, if you know what I'm saying. It's had to fill a need that kind of the city itself cannot. And so they have these buses all over the city now, and they even have a pop-up care village. But this is like an amazing piece of work. And the design aspects of this is actually really important. It's designed like method cleaning or IKEA or something, like it's bright and it's optimistic. It's not meant to shame the people using it. It's like, we're here, it's not trying to hide it. And I think it's just quite a fantastic example of what can be done if you really look at a problem and design something right to it. Okay, we can do better than the coolest cooler, right? Okay, number 1, obvious, but solve problems that people actually have. There's a million things. Again, I'm not going to read any more to you. I think you've all experienced and seen some of them. Let's try and solve problems that people actually have, because God knows we all have a lot of them right now. I have a 12-year-old daughter and an 80-year-old father who is diagnosed with dementia, and nothing is being designed for these people. I have so many things that could be so helpful on either end to kind of aid me in the care of these people in my life. I think what was interesting about the Cooper Hewitt show on accessibility is that almost everything in that show was designed by someone who had direct experience with the solution. Their parent had dementia, their sister had autism, something, and they designed something to respond to that need, which makes total sense. I'm wondering though, do we all need to experience something grave in order to solve for it? I don't think so. It just seems that that's usually the driver, and we need to figure out how we can maybe build in this mechanism to gain empathy or a sort of greater understanding of people different from us, which seems so obvious but does not seem apparent in the market. So expand your user group. I think I've harped on that a bit. Diversify your workforce. This is a chart of Silicon Valley workers. It is a surprise, but not a surprise, that you see there that 64% of Silicon Valley workers are white. And then you see how low especially the Black and Hispanic population is within. This doesn't cover gender, which is even a more stark statistic in the Valley, and so need to work on that. Expand your networks. This is a little memo from Jerry Brown, who, he's the governor of California. These are his final days in office, and this is, he just signed into law the fact that every public board of directors needs to have at least one woman on the board, which I appreciate, yes. There are so many design firms, tech firms, et cetera, with not at all equal representation, not even close representation, and it does matter. If there were a bunch of female VCs, we'd have an amazing breast pump, for example. Don't reinvent the wheel. If you follow transportation Twitter, which is awesome, you'll see stuff like this all the time. That's a bus. You invented a bus. The extent to which this happens on almost a daily basis is quite shocking. I do observe, I worked for IDEO. I've been in the realm of design consultancy. I do observe this kind of obsession with, call it what you want, first principles, fresh eyes, this idea that you should be unencumbered by expertise, that the best way to solve a problem is to know nothing about it. And I appreciate that it's important to come to a problem with fresh eyes. I do not appreciate coming to a problem with zero knowledge of what came before it, because you're going to invent the bus. And this happens on a weekly basis. So, view opportunities through an equity lens, again, which is really, really hard. And I'm not saying I have the answers to it, but I think we're past the time we all need to really start incorporating this into work. I would add to this sustainability. I feel when I was at Dwell, I was the editor-in-chief there until 2006, that we went through this era of like a lot of attention and design focused on sustainable products. When I first started there in 2000, I felt it was like plastic, 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 like camera sheet and stuff. And then it was like, oh no, we can't do all the plastic. We need to really think about what we're putting out in the world. And now I feel like there's almost no conversation around sustainable design, or that it's really weakened in recent years. And I think we really need to kind of reintroduce that to the fore. Equity as well, that we really need to think about how our products are serving a broad variety of people. What happens to the customer that doesn't have a smartphone, for example, which is still a lot of people. Yes, remember that not everyone has or knows how to use a smartphone. My 80-year-old father, he has one. It's like a point of pride that he has an iPhone, but he actually doesn't know how to use it. And he can't call, he can't really figure out how to call an Uber. Now, Uber could very easily make a service where someone just called it instead of use an app, but have been really reticent to do it. Recently, my daughter was trying to go somewhere with my dad, and they were having trouble calling a car on the phone. And my daughter said to me later, she goes, "We couldn't figure out how to do it, so I found a millennial, and they helped us out." I said that was the right thing to do. That's good. Though designers in the audience will cringe at this telephone, sometimes I will say, you might have to design something that doesn't look fantastic, but is functional. This could look better. It's okay to me that this doesn't look great if someone can actually use it to get what they need. And that's sacrilegious to say to a group of designers, but sometimes the function does need to override the form. Learn about and value the experiences of people different from you. Just going back to what I said about the Cooper Hewitt show, hopefully we don't all have to experience something dark and tragic in our life to appreciate what that is. And I'm not saying that we can only design for people with troubling experiences, but just figure out ways to open up who you're exposed to, who you're working for. It's okay to move slowly and repair things, not just move fast and break one. I feel like we're really having a reckoning right now of all the move towards disruption, which is a good thing. This, by the way, is my daughter a couple years ago at Design Build for girls. Get your girls using power tools. I once told my daughter to use her fork, not her hand. She goes, "I prefer power tools." Just good. That's it. Thank you.
Fabulous. All right. Well, hopefully we have a minute to get some questions answered, and they're all my questions. So I'm a little bit curious just about your fascination with travel trailers, and I know you talk a lot about transportation. So there's a theme in here.
Sure, absolutely. I can tell you about my fascination with travel trailers. So. Many years ago, I was having dinner with a friend that I had been friends with a long time, and we hadn't seen each other for a while, and he was doing a book design project in design school. And I said, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, well, I did this project on Airstream Trailers. My brother and I bought an old, rusted out one and rebuilt it, and he had done this beautiful kind of like graphic treatment of it." And at the time, I was working as an editor at Chronicle Books, and I said, "Oh, I could totally sell this project at Chronicle Books." And so we did that Airstream trailer book, which some of you might have seen, and he became my husband, and we have a trailer, and so we have this weird trailer thing.
Fascination. I tend to name my cars. Have you named your trailer?
We have not named the trailer.
Okay, might have to just
think about that. It is like a thing that we have. Pottery Barn actually used our trailer and took all these photographs of it and made like a scale model that they sold as a Christmas gift. It's like an Airstream trailer that they sold in the store, and it's our trailer. It's our random claim to fame.
It's merch.
It's merch.
I like it.
Yeah.
Superheroes next.
Yes.
Allison Superhero. So also want to just kind of back up to your bio and your PhD. So how did you know? How long did you stress leaving that program, and how did you know?
Okay, so it's a good story, I think. So I got my master's in art history at UC Davis. I moved to New York to get my PhD. I was in my PhD program for, I don't know, a year and a half, and I'm like, and I was writing about contemporary art, and I was like, God, it's going to be, I saw the writing on the wall about academia. Like, am I going to be able to teach contemporary art? Like, I wrote my master's thesis on a living artist. I actually did a panel when he was sitting next to me, which was strange. And I'm like, just correct me if I'm completely off base. But I didn't really want to teach contemporary art in some small town in the middle of America where people couldn't see it. And I was getting frustrated by academia for a number of reasons. And I went to this panel at the College Art Association, and it was all people who had got their PhDs and were doing other fabulous things. This one woman had like married a bullfighter and was now like CEO of CityLab. I don't know, they all just did these amazing things. And I remember sitting there going, I can leave and it's gonna be okay. And I became the world's oldest editorial assistant at Random House after that.
That should be in your bio too.
Maybe not, but yeah, old editorial assistant.
Nice.
Yeah.
Seasoned.
Seasoned.
Thank
yes,
you.
About language. Chris says yes. I was a seasoned editorial assistant, and I had only ever written anything. The only stuff I had published when I started at Dwell were academic articles, and the first article I ever wrote for Dwell had footnotes, which was ridiculous. And Carrie Jacobs, who was the founding editor-in-chief, she's like, you know, we're not publishing this with footnotes. I didn't know how to write any other way, and it was like the training wheels are off. You can't use footnotes anymore. And so it was a good, I was like thrown into the pool, like you can't do that anymore.
Shed those sandbags,
yeah.
Yes. Another question, I guess, about writing, because I think writing has superpowers. I mean, and you say you solve problems, or at least investigate problems by writing. So how would you describe writing in terms of its role in your process?
So writing, my process is, everyone has a different process. I probably spend 95% of my time thinking and then maybe 2% writing. I just like figure it all out and I stress about it and then I just sit down and like write my New York Times thing in an hour. I'm just like, all right, I'm ready. And if I start too soon, it's awful. And I just, for a long time, I beat myself up about that, and I was like, no, this is just how you do it. I feel, especially in the last, well, no, I would say since my Dwell days, that I see writing as a form of advocacy. You know, I've written a ton, say, about how badly suburbia is designed and how it promotes social isolation and car dependence and bad health outcomes. And I'm writing about those things because they're interesting, yes, because I want people to actually think about them and maybe behave differently or really think about what they're doing. And so to me, especially because it's for opinion, it's like reported, but also it's me just like trying to push unabashedly an agenda of change.
Good. So a lot of thinking, but it just kind of has to get crystallized in.
Yeah, like I had a huge essay due recently, and I started it too soon, and it was awful. I mean, I finished it, and it's fine, but it just is not.
Rabbit holes.
Yeah.
Too many doors open.
Yeah.
I love it. Allison Arieff, thank you.